Based in activist Nashville office, Caitlin Stone Jasper began her career as an assistant to activist partner Matt Maher in 2010, was promoted to manager in 2012 and to partner in January of 2021. She's been an asset in developing the company's music division, overseeing the activism department and activist fellowship program, and serves as the co-chair for the Activist Foundation. Her work with the Activist Foundation was instrumental in raising millions of dollars in COVID-19 related emergency relief, including providing over 350,000 meals to desperate Nepali families during the COVID-19 crisis. Stone Jasper's day-to-day role of heading the activism department includes fostering many relationships with organizations such as Everytown, Sandy Hook Promise, Headcount, Last Prisoner Project, and more. Stone Jasper is also the day-to-day manager for acclaimed musician, humanitarian, hotel owner Michael Franti of Michael Franti and Spearhead, and rising country star Britney Spears. And I got to tell you, Michael Franti and his band are actually coming to San Diego this week. They're going to be at Rady Shell. If you get a chance, come on down. It is a phenomenal concert. I saw him a couple years ago when he was over at Humphreys by the Bay, and it may have been one of the best concerts I've been to. He is just such a force for positivity in the world, and we need so much more of that. But he sees his music as a way to really change the world. And if you get to come to his concert, you'll see why. He just is one song at a time, you know, in his lane. He's doing everything he can to change the world, and he's having a lot of success with it as well. So if you get a chance, come and check out kind of what he's doing. Stone Jasper also heads up activist, the company Health and Wellness arm, as a dually certified health and life coach, where she interfaces with clients, colleagues, and outside partners in several areas, including mental health, therapy placements, life coaching, health plans, primary and specialty doctor placements, and more. Stone Jasper is proud to have spent the early days of her career on the management team for the 3-time Grammy Award-winning Zac Brown Band, which she worked alongside for 7 years, traveled with them and everything. I've heard some great stories there when she traveled with them. She was on the bus, and she really helped them for 7 years, 3 years which were spent on the road with the group full-time. Stone Jasper is an immensely proud graduate of the University of Alabama, Roll Tide, and is newly married, loves her husband dearly, and they're an incredibly good-looking couple. They're an incredible couple. Newly married and the proud mom of 2 4-legged children, Max and Lainey. And here's very cool. Just this year, Stone Jasper, Caitlin, my good friend, was named 40 top Billboard's top 40 under 40. So they chose out of many people whose names were put in the hat, hundreds of people. And because of the work that she's done, she was listed as one of the top, and you can look this up online. She was listed as one of the top 40 under 40 through Billboard magazine, which is such an incredible honor for her. And she's earned it. She's worked very hard. And as you're going to see here in the video, she is a very serious person, very passionate person about what she does. And she just does incredible work. So you need to hear from her, not from me. So let's get straight to the interview here today. Caitlin Stone Jasper, I'm very excited for you. And then I'll see you at the end of the podcast. So let's just start there. And then I want to kind of go back and get your story. Talked about activism and what that is, what that means for you, what that means for your organization.
Absolutely. You know, we started this company 5 years ago now. The majority of our team, as you know, was together for a long time at a different organization where we focused just on management. And we, didn't really, the forethought was not how do we make a larger impact? How do we work on something that's greater than ourselves? So we came together, we were talking about what are we going to call this new company of ours. And actually, Michael Franti, who is one of my clients that you have grown to love.
Yes, he's hard not to love.
He's the ultimate activist, and he's been doing this work all over the world for 3 decades, if not more now. And so we really just zoned in on what he stood for. And we decided this is a really good thing to call ourselves. At the same time, it comes with a lot of responsibility. And we knew that it would alienate some people from wanting to be part of our team. But I think for me, at the most simplest form, we define like, what is your definition of activism and
Mm-hmm.
activists? And I always use the example, like I was with my grandmother last night. My grandmother is Southern out from Alabama. And her definition of an activist is going to be different than my definition, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so
Yeah.
really just knowing what your definition is and then figuring out what are the causes and the things that you want to work towards. You know, so often people are like, oh, so you guys like work with a lot of nonprofits. And I'm like, yes and no. It's more like, how do we really move the needle long term? And I actually just left a coffee with this beautiful woman who's head of sustainability at a really well-known company. And just hearing the work that she's doing to, you know, green companies and do you know, educational work on outreach of how we can, as humans, day to day, do better. And all of our clients have different causes. And our main thing is like, how do we nurture those relationships with these different organizations? Whether it's yesterday, I was on the phone with Everytown for gun violence. You know, tomorrow I'll be talking to our, you know, our climate team about what's going on. And it's really from policy to local level, understanding and helping people know who to vote for based on the things that are important to them, all the way up to like just picking up the trash that's in your neighborhood. So it really, I think from the music standpoint, have that as the forethought and not the afterthought on every project that we're doing. We green every one of our tours, which is like you and I have talked about this extensively and what goes into that. But it's been so interesting because I didn't know anything about this stuff 5 years ago. Like I didn't know anything about like the climate and gun violence and what was happening at a policy level. I mean, I really didn't. So I love that at that point in my career, it really challenged me to dig in. And I had really good partners that said, you know what? We see this fire in you. We're going to make you head of activism. So not only do you have to do the work and you have to challenge yourself, but now you can lead in this, which meant I read like 50 publications a day. You know, I just want to be constantly in it. And it might just be like, I spend 30 minutes in the morning just browsing through to know what's going on all over the world. And I will say that once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you know the facts, you have to do the work, at least for me, because I have a conscience and I can't imagine not going out and doing the work. So I think at the most basic level, especially for people like your students, define what activism means to you, find a couple of causes or even one that's important, and find a little community around you where you can go out, find a couple of friends and or strangers that are into the same thing, and go out in your community, even if it's local, could be all the way up to international, and just do the work and educate yourself. So when you sit down and you are having a meal with your friends, or you and I are talking, we can talk about things that are a little bit more important than just what the weather's like.
That's deep.
Although the weather conversation leads to all kinds of things right now with what's going on in the world, the climate crisis that we're in. But, you know, I think just young people, especially, they are activating, and it's amazing to see. They're activating way more than my generation and your generation. We're different generations, as you know. I love seeing how hungry they are, you know, but it's the thread of what we do.
But you're bringing up a great point here, which is, and then we'll get to your story. And see, this is what you and I do, Caitlin. We'll get on and we'll talk about something forever. But when people think about an artist, when they think about the world that you're in, I don't typically think of activists. I think about people who are in the studio preparing music and they're just trying to get famous. That's all they're trying to do. But what you're saying, at least for the organization that you're a partner in, it's much deeper than that. Talk to us about that in terms of what makes a really good person, what makes a good artist, what makes a successful person with kind of what you've experienced in life.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yes, it's about the music. Of course, we work in film and TV and all those things, but you know, my focus is music. It is about the music, but not all artists are going to succeed. We know that. It's a very small percentage. Right. Thankfully, the ones that we work with, for the most part, have great success or have success. At the same time, we want them to get to the end of their careers and the end of their lives and know that they've done something greater than just, you know, going in. And don't get me wrong, the power of music is so powerful.
Oh, big time.
And being able to, for me, it's even like encouraging them to talk about the things that are really important to them, to talk about the things, you know, I have a client that has a song called Thoughts and Prayers. It's all about gun violence. You know, we have Franti sings about things all the time. We managed the Grateful Dead. Look at the activism line in their music over decades and decades. Our clients are not scared to talk about the hard things that are happening in the world. And so for me, even in their songwriting, which is the core, there's activism in there. But,
Wow.
also it's like, okay, now we have this song, you see a lot of people, and not to shit on them by any means, but see a lot of folks that are like, we're going to give the proceeds of this single to blah, blah, blah. First off, there's no money in that. Hate to say it. The majority of the time, it's like a number one top 40 song. Cool, but how do we tap into the message of that? And maybe there's a local organization or a national organization that we can do some greater work with. Also, you're going to go out on tour and tour that song. How do we make sure that your tour, that the carbon footprint is offset, so you're not just ripping through town, destroying everything? How do we make sure that we're educating your fans at the show on the meaning of that song and telling them to activate on that? There's all these different layers. And so we really start with the song and the project, but how can we get deep roots in the meaning of that across the board? And sometimes a client just has a song. I mean, look, I live in Nashville, just country songs all the time. They're about just a bunch of trucks and beer and everything else. So it is a little bit harder to really like infiltrate there. But I think if you can have an open relationship with your client, you can say, this is an awesome song. How do we make the biggest impact? And that doesn't just mean on the charts. Doesn't just mean streams. How do we make a larger impact? Sometimes though, it just comes down to the one-on-one interactions. We're going to watch Franti's show together next week. You and I know we'll see the one-on-one interaction of the song. And a lot of that just comes through being vulnerable in the music, talking about the issues so people can relate to it. And then they feel like they can actually let their walls down. So there's a lot of psychology in it as well.
It's amazing. And again, most people I don't think they recognize that or realize that even with artists, the big ones that they're spending millions of dollars on or hundreds of dollars on to go see, that there's so much that goes into it. And I think that's really good for me to hear. And it's good for our classes to hear who are going to be on this, that leadership, and it's so much deeper than just getting a position or a title or making money or becoming CEO. There's got to be something more under. I want to get to your story. Tell us how, at the beginning of this video, obviously, I read through your biography, but tell me, how did you become Caitlin Stone Jasper? How did you get to this point where you are today, which is, again, one of the coolest things this year, and I've already mentioned this, but to be listed as one of the Billboard's top 40 under 40, that's amazing. How did you build yourself into who you are today?
I wanted for the longest time to be 30 under 30 on Billboard. And then I realized when I hit 30, no one really does a whole lot before 30 in this business that actually moves the needle. If anything, they're working on someone else's clients. And so it was definitely a great honor to have that. It's a piece of paper at the end of the day, but it really helps our business. I don't know. I had a very complex upbringing. I had all the odds against me in a lot of ways. And I say that to say, like, I've done the work to figure out who I am. I've done the work. I always tell young people, man, figure out who you are and grab your confidence and don't let go of it. And there's really an epidemic, I feel like, with young people now more than ever, that they lack their confidence. And because the world is just more and more challenging to live in.
Huge.
And add social media into it. And you add the fact that we're watching the top 1% and we have to be perfect and we have to sound perfect and all these things. And it's like, you are one unique person. And if I have one thing that I took from my upbringing, it's confidence. Even through like a lot of really intense stuff and really harsh trauma, I never lost my confidence. And because of that, and I never really let it spawn to arrogance, because there's a fine line, as you and I know.
Yeah.
I just always knew that if I educated myself and I kept my mouth shut when I needed to and just listened, that I could pretty much do anything, And of course, you set these goals where you're like, I want to do X in my career. I was never the person that's like, I want to get married at a certain age and have children. So I was really career oriented. But the key is that I surrounded myself with people that supported where I wanted to go. I have the best business partners in the world. I've been here for 15 years. And actually, when I was just at this coffee with this woman, her husband is very high up in the music industry. And she goes, I read your bio. I couldn't believe that you've been there that long, because no one stays in the entertainment industry.
Wow.
But when you find a tribe and you tell them, because I had been through a lot of therapy, I was able to say, here's what I want. Here's what I don't want. Here are my triggers, workplace and in home life. And here's what I want to accomplish. Can you help me get there? And the answer was, yeah, we can, and or we'll try our best to help you get there. But I just, as a whole, I always just when I fell down, and I've fallen down a lot, I went
Same.
back to my mentors. I tried my
Mhm.
best not to just get in my head, which is so easy.
Mhm.
But let's be honest, I fucked up a lot. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
You're fine. You're
I
fine.
messed up a lot. But I think, look, you gotta know. And a lot of times I talk to kids all the time and they're like, I have no idea what I want to do. And I'm like, cool, that's cool. You're gonna probably get to 80 and still not know what you want to do. But if
Woo!
you can
It's a
grasp
journey.
something and you can find your
Yeah.
tribe
Yeah.
at each stage of your life, then and just like be able to admit your mistakes,
Mhm.
then you're gonna continue to grow.
I want to go deep on this, just a little bit, because the students. So we've done some things before with Azusa Pacific University, and those are typically undergrads. This class, there's going to be about 70 people who watch this. They're between. It's a master's. It's 2 master's courses. They're between the ages of like 26 all the way into their 60s, right? But you just said 2 things that I think are really important. So I'm going to grab on one first. You talk about your tribe. Caitlin, you were surrounded by, I've done a deep dive on you. You were surrounded by high capacity, amazing human beings who you're one of them. It's not like they brought you along and you're just kind of like, you're part of that group. Becoming, I guess maybe that's the question. In order to attract those kind of people in your life, you have to be that kind of person. How did you talk about your upbringing, and you and I both have had, harder upbringings. We've had to overcome therapy and all that kind of stuff. For both of us, how were you able to become a person that now walks in the rooms with the people that you are? And it's phenomenal. How did you become that person who has attracted the kind of tribe that you have? I think it's phenomenal. And what would you recommend for someone who's in their 30s and 40s, like on this call today, who's saying, I'm trying to attract a tribe like what Caitlin has, but maybe I'm not there yet. How would they do that?
Yeah, well, I think it goes hand in hand with the confidence piece.
Mm-hmm.
To speak to my tribe, I have incredibly brilliant business partners, as you know, and
Amazing.
always try to put myself in a room where I was learning. And I think honestly, though, it's really about finding common ground. I hated very, very early in my career. I'm in Nashville. I'm in a very white male dominated industry. I hated walking into a room and somebody introduced themselves, or I was introduced to them, and they were like, nice to meet you. And I'm like, I met you last week, and there was something that really got under my skin at a young age about people not remembering. And I go, okay, I'm never going to go in a room ever again where someone doesn't remember who I am, or at least go, yeah, we've crossed at some point, but I didn't want to be the person that was like in people's face. I am like a very true introvert. And I will say studying and accepting that I'm an introvert and extrovert's business and world has been one of my greatest learning curves and strengths. So I was like, how do I find common ground with these people? My entry point into almost every room is sports. I'm a sports girl. I know sports backwards and forwards. And so I can't tell you, I would research, I still do it. I went to lunch the other day with Harvey Mason Jr., who runs the Grammys, who's an incredible, incredible man. Never met him before.
Awesome.
I was like, if I only have 5 minutes to grab this person's attention, I know that I can get into a conversation and I can wow people about sports. And everybody will have their own thing, but how do I find common ground immediately? And I take them out of the space of work, because we can talk shop all day long. I want to talk shop on the back half of the meeting. I want to talk human on the front part of the meeting. And so I'll Google and figure out, where does somebody go to school? If somebody went to school, they're probably going to follow that sports team, and if they didn't, can I find anything about them, whether it's on their social media, it's on their LinkedIn, whatever, where they're tied back to that? Very few people have I learned can I not figure out who their sports teams are. So I always tell people, like, figure out how you can find common ground fast. And I was never going to walk into a room and somebody was going to remember me because I had a unique look. I'm a blonde white girl. Okay, there's probably going to be 15 other blonde white girls in the room. So I had to like kind of go through the list and go, and if I'm not able to have a conversation with them longer than 3 minutes, where they can know anything about who I am, my upbringing, the complexities of it, whatever, where they go, shit, okay, I'm not going to forget your story. Not going to happen 99% of the time. So that's been my token. It's worked more. I cannot tell you the relationships I've been able to make over sports. And it's funny because anyone in this industry that knows me, they'll go, Caitlin Stone Jasper. Oh yeah, she's a diehard sports fan. It forced me to continue to be able to educate, Or of course, if I figure out that they're really into something else, then I'll go educate myself on that to the best of my ability. And people just want to be like seen and heard. So if you know a little bit about them, or a little bit about their families, it goes a long way.
So it can
And
happen
I
for
tell you,
anybody. Yeah, no, that's incredible. So it can happen for anybody. If you're 20s and 30s, it's so key. In the last couple of weeks, this idea you're talking about, finding common ground, has come up several times. So what you're saying is, no matter where people are, that can happen for them. Confidence. You've mentioned that several times. I was in a training call this week, Caitlin, with a group of executives from Harbor Freight, and these are all like strong-willed people. We're talking about like leadership training, soft skills. And then halfway through, I asked the question, and somebody talked about their greatest fear right now is anxiety, fear, and a lack of confidence. And these are people who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. They're talking about this.
established, yeah.
You've done a lot of work on this. To the extent you feel comfortable, what does that work look like? And again, what would you tell someone who's in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s today, and they're saying, I need to gain confidence? Because I guarantee there are a lot of our students who would admit that, maybe not publicly, but privately. What are steps that they can begin to take even now to be that leader, to gain that confidence, so they can move to the next, level?
Look, I mean, it's obviously, it's completely different for every person. I think what has worked for me, and I can really only speak to my own story, is I tried my best to get to know me, really get to know me, not the version of myself that maybe I want people to know, or the world. A couple of the things that I've had to, obviously extensive therapy has helped, but that was my story and I had to have it in order to survive.
Same.
But truly, I don't care what other people think. Like, I just, they don't know the facts the majority of the time. So like, why am I going to give the energy to somebody else to judge me, for that to dictate the decision that I'm going to make next? Knowing who I am, a few things that I've done to know who I am. One, I studied extroversion and introversion. It was really, really helpful to know exactly what's my capacity in every single setting. What can I offer? Another thing that it was really helpful was strengths. You and I have done strength training on a number of levels, obviously doing it with Mitch, who's our shared business coach, really knowing what my strengths are. So when I go into a room, if somebody says, I need you to do this, I can say confidently, I'll tell you, I can't, I'll find somebody for you, but that's not my strength. And being able to say no has been really, really, really helpful in building my confidence as well. And little tools like the Enneagram. I mean, knowing there's not one employee that we hire, even an intern, that we don't ask them what their Enneagram type is or to take the quiz, because I want people to understand how I'm wired and how I'm going to present things. And I want to know how I can present them to others. There's nothing worse when I go in and I present something to a client or to somebody that I work with and they don't receive it. And I go, wait, why didn't they receive it? And it's like, well, I didn't present it to them in the way that they receive information. If I do, though, it's going to build my confidence in the conversation. So it's like all these little tools, from really knowing what I can bring to the table all the way up to how other people really need to receive information, that allow me to go in. I'm a huge prepper as well. I want to know that, not in an end of the world sense. I would say that. I want to know that if I'm going to go into a room and add value, that I'm not the person that's like, I don't really know, or that I'm just adding fluff to a conversation. I'd rather add one strong point and that be it, and listen the rest of the time. And I'll also openly admit, I don't actually know, but I'm here to learn. Please educate me if you do know.
Wow.
I think that's a lot of different things. And you know how extreme my ADHD is, which is a whole nother topic, but I don't give people the power to make me feel that I'm not good enough. I just know, yes, I've got some credentials and some stripes at this point, which is definitely helpful in building the confidence. But from day one, I always knew this is my place in this portion of my life. I'm in an educational place right now. I just need to listen. I'm in a place where I do think I can add value, even though I'm the youngest person in the room by a long shot. Maybe if I just wait my turn, I can say something powerful and meaningful before we exit this space. Doesn't mean that there's some situations I walk into that I'm still somewhat uncomfortable, but I also just embrace that. Like, great, why am I comfortable right now? What is it? Is it something that I'm putting on myself? Is it because I don't feel like I have something to add? The largest power that I've been given, probably though, in the last decade is like, when you don't know, just listen. We all feel like we have to add something.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes. And human nature, we feel like we've got to jump in all the time and say something. And sometimes we just need to shut your mouth. You know what I'm saying? Not you. I'm saying we. Yeah.
Honestly, exactly my husband's really taught me that. My husband's a listener. He's an internalizer, and he's a listener. And you guys are such a good looking couple, Caitlin.
I mean, it's like Model City. Oh my gosh, you guys are
He's the
adorable.
absolute best.
Incredible.
I'll
Yeah.
never forget having a conversation with him early on, though, where I was dumping a bunch of secondary trauma probably on him. And I go, you haven't said anything. Like, I've told you all these things, you haven't said anything. And he goes, you haven't asked me a question. And I
Wow.
was like, wow,
That's
wow, right?
deep.
I was like, you're right, I haven't. And it helps me redefine what real
Yeah.
listening is and real
Yeah.
active listening. He could repeat everything I
Wow.
had just said to him, but he's
Mhm.
like, you haven't asked me a question.
Mhm. That's great. How important has
Yeah.
your spouse been? And I know you're recently married, but you've been with, and your husband's name is, you've mentioned it before, but I forget.
Jasper. Well,
Jasper.
Michael Jasper, yeah.
Michael, what a cool name that is, Michael Jasper. How important is finding the right partner? And we don't have to talk too much about this, but I know you've picked well. He picked extremely well. How important is that, finding the right partner, the right spouse on this journey?
Don't go there unless you know. But I'll tell you, the
Yeah.
only reason that this works is because we both did our own work before we came together. We
Wow.
weren't worried about timelines. We weren't worried
That's the
about,
key right
I mean,
there.
I think we
Wow.
both really had a desire to find our partner.
Mm-hmm.
But we made sure that we really knew who we were ahead of time, and that, and granted, we're still learning and growing every single day. Of course, we will be until the day that we die. I've told Jasper he has to die one day after me because I don't want to do this alone.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just always, we know each other's communication styles. I think same thing with my business partners. We know each other's communication styles. We can present to each other in a way that we know the other person receives. We know each other's love languages. I mean, same thing with my business partners. It's just really using the tools and the resources that are out there to make sure that we communicate in the way that is healthy for both of us. It's been a really fruitful venture so far. My
It's
husband and I never had
amazing.
a word. And I don't say like people that have to choose to fight it out doesn't work for them. But I think knowing our backgrounds, it also is very helpful that he understands my world.
I was going to say, you're a very strong personality and you live in a completely different world, and he gets it and he empowers you to do what you do and to become who you are. So, I mean, it's fun to watch from the outside as well. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. At some point, Caitlin, though, I want on my own podcast, I want to set up like 90 minutes with you, because you've said so many things that I want to pick at, but I realize we don't have time to do that in this podcast. But at some point, let's do a 90-minute sit back, relax, full on, grab a drink, the two of us, and we can talk deeper about this.
Yes.
3 questions that I want to ask to kind of wrap this. So the 2 classes that are coming, the 2 larger classes, and I think I'm going to give this interview to another class as well, because you said so many things that would help with that one. But the 2 classes, one is leading with service and leading with purpose. You've talked a little bit about leading with service with the activism, but what's something that you would say, the mindset of service is serving the marketplace, using your gifts, talents, whatever they are, to serve other people. How have you seen that play out in your life? How have you done that well in your life? What advice would you give to someone if they're really trying to lead with service?
I think you have to know what your values are first and foremost. And you really have to, and I think your values, in my opinion, aren't really going to shift a lot throughout your life. It's kind of like your Enneagram number. Once you're one thing, you're probably going to hold on to that. If you really know what your values are, and then you make sure that you're aligning with certain people that also value those. Like if you go into a workplace or into a project or into a relationship and you don't clearly state your values, then how are you going to serve that person? How are you going to, and I will say you and I come from similar backgrounds, and like we have servant hearts. And sitting around a table with my family that I finally got to see last night, we are all believers, and I support people that believe in all different walks and work with all different walks and forms and fashion. But we have like biblical servant hearts, and we're always trying to mimic really Jesus's heart in that regard. And to me, he's the greatest activist that ever walked, and the belief I have. But you just have to, I don't know, it's not everybody has a servant heart. And I think that's where you have to focus on the purpose side of things. But like, if you can really feel it deep down that this aligns with my life values, then it's an easy walk. But the second that it doesn't, you have to be okay to cut ties. And you really have to, there's not this whole like, well, it kind of aligns here, but it doesn't align here, so I'll just serve on this part, but not, no. Like it's going to crash and burn over time. And it's probably going to leave you in a much harder spot if you'll just accept that this is not serving me. Therefore, I cannot serve it. And I have to walk away from it.
I'm learning something here. I love that. So it's a two-way street, right? It's making sure that thing, whatever it is serving you as an individual, and out of that service to you now you're able to serve back, right? So that, I guess that would be like someone working for the wrong company, someone doing a job that they're not, they're an attorney because their dad said they're supposed to be an attorney, but that's not really what they're supposed to do, right? So it's finding something that serves you as well. Wow, I've never heard it said that way before. You just taught me something. That's incredible.
Day one at my company, I was 20 years old. I didn't know shit, but I did know at this stage of my life, these are the things I value, and I listed them. And I do know that I need positive reinforcement. I needed instant gratification, and I didn't want to come to work before 9 o'clock in the morning. That was also one of the things because I'm not out. But I mean, even being able to say those small things up front and list out some of my values and go, is this a company that can support that, or at least meet me in the middle on it? And we reestablished in a workforce, we've reestablished those a number of times because obviously we're all growing together. But yeah, you just got to, but you got to know what you need. You got to know what you want, or you at least have to have an inkling of what your values are. But you need to be able to circle back to those all the time too. This world challenges your values constantly.
Big time.
Constantly.
Big time. Leading with purpose. That was a phenomenal answer too, by the way. I love that, finding something that serves you, being able to serve the world with it. But you got to know yourself first, right? So that leading with purpose side is probably going to be close to what you just said. What encouragement would you give you finding one's purpose, finding an organizational purpose, finding a team purpose, right? I'm a firm believer in both you and I are, so much starts with purpose. What advice would you give to people as they're seeking out their own purpose? Or if we've got an entrepreneur on the call or a business owner, and what's the purpose of my organization? Where does that start from?
What's your why? Why are you doing it? And where do you find joy? So many people seek out and they do these lifelong jobs or they're entrepreneurs or whatever, but they don't find joy in it. I'm reading the 80-20 principle right now, and that's kind of what brought me back to the joy side of it. Does this bring you joy? Because if it's not, then it's not your purpose. I mean, that's the most basic side of it, honestly, in my opinion. And yeah, are there going to be horribly shit days? Of course there are. And you got to be able to have the resources to bounce back and to know that that's fleeting, and that you've got a really solid tribe, and that you know yourself, and that you know your strengths, and that you're still working towards your why and why you did this. And and my health coach certification, so much of it is around, and my life coach certifications is, what is your why? And it's not the surface level why, like truly, why are you doing this? And I remember them using an example. So this is maybe not the most appropriate example, but it was one that they gave us in our training. This woman who's like, I want to lose X amount of weight. Okay, cool. Why? Well, because I just want to be skinnier. Okay, well, why do you want to be skinnier? Well, I just want to feel healthier. Why do you want to feel healthier? Well, I just want, to look good in a bathing suit. Why do you want to look? Well, when I go to the local pool club and my husband's there and all of our friends, I want to. Well, why do you? Well, I really just want love from my husband. And I want him to love me for who I am. And it's like, you have all of these layers, and you got to keep asking yourself the deeper layer as to why you're doing something. Sometimes it's because it is driven by something that your family has instilled in you, which is great. But is it a healthy installation? And I think if people will stop, doesn't matter if they're an entrepreneur or they're in any kind of career, like, why am I doing this for the longevity?
And especially for... Absolutely. And for our younger students, I think as well, and I say younger, like in their 20s, I'm sure you and I've been there for sure, doing things not because of the joy it brings, but because it's the platform, or it's the making somebody proud, or somebody made fun of me in 4th grade and said this. And so I'm going to do all this to make that and that person doesn't even know I exist anymore. Right. But I'm still going after. They don't even care. They're on their own world, but I'm still trying to. Exactly.
Well,
final
the mommy
question.
Daddy thing's very interesting too.
That's a huge thing. Caitlin, you and I know.
Work through your mommy and daddy issues, man. I cannot stress it enough. Like, and the most basic level of that. And I was talking to my brother-in-law about this last night, who has a very challenging relationship with my mother-in-law. What are the messages that you hear in your head from your upbringing?
Oh man, that's
From a
huge.
parent, from a
It's
sibling,
huge.
whatever it is.
It's
If you
huge.
just take just a couple of minutes and you write down, you really be honest, you're not sharing with
Mhm.
anybody. What are those messages that you hear? You might hear really positive ones. Awesome. Actually, as
Mhm.
complex as my upbringing was, I actually do hear positive ones. You can do whatever you want. You're the best, you're the chosen, all
Mhm.
these things. But even as small as like, go to your room and until you're happy,
Mhm.
suppressing your emotions of how you actually
Mhm.
feel.
Mhm.
Um, you're not good enough. I mean, there's so many messages, but if you're
Big time.
honest about what those messages are,
Yeah.
they are playing in your subconscious all day,
All the
every day. And
time.
until you identify them and you're able to turn them around and redefine them, they're going to continuously drive whatever your purpose is.
Mm-hmm. Caitlin, it's interesting you say this. I was working for a male one time who now we're very good friends, but at the time, it was the worst working relationship. Long story short, I'm still doing therapy 9 years later, right? Not as much as maybe at the beginning, but I had to go to therapy. Like I went to my therapist about this issue. I said, we've got to figure this out or I'm going to get fired. He's the boss. And we came to find out it was all my own father issues, right?
A
It was
1,000%.
all
Yeah.
that. And I'm taking it to him and expecting him to be the dad that mine wasn't. Right. And when I was able to realize that, everything was able to get solved. And it was me. I had to change, not him. I had to change because I was expecting him to take a role that he wasn't supposed to. But when you say that, I think that is so key. And that might be something later on we come back and have a deeper conversation about that, because I think people bring that into the workplace. I certainly have. And it's caused problems, right? Because I didn't take care of
Well, a
the
lot of
early
times people don't
issues.
even realize that they're doing it, That's
Most
the hard
people
thing.
don't realize it took my therapist to point that out for me. Right. And I'm sitting
Yeah.
there blaming this guy. And so, and she's very calm, cool. And she just, the 7 whys, just, okay, let's dive deep. And when I realized, wait a minute, I'm trying to put him in a place, but most people don't, and they're searching for mommy and daddy's approval in the workplace, right? The stuff they didn't get as a
Can't
kid.
do it.
That's a huge thing right there. Final question I want to ask you. Your faith is so important to you. This is Point Loma Nazarene University. So obviously it's founded on faith, and we have a lot of our students that are different backgrounds. Actually, that's what I like the master's programs. We have some people that are atheists, some people are diehard Christians. How has your faith shaped you, and how would you encourage our students to allow their faith, whatever that looks like, to shape their work life, their professional life, who they become as a person?
Yeah, big question. I mean, I work in an industry that is not known for folks that share their faith.
Mm-hmm.
Artists, everybody has to be really, you got to keep your platform open.
Mm-hmm.
I have been very vocal about my faith for a long time. I've also been vocal that I'm in a chapter right now that's been very interesting. I married a Jewish man, which my family did not accept. Thankfully, they have at this point. But I was not raised in a world where, until I had the choice to really explore, where there was anything outside of just Southern Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
And I have done a lot of work, I would say, in the last 5 years, specifically traveling around the world, learning about other people's beliefs, really understanding, finding common ground in those. And it's opened my eyes to a lot of different things. It goes back to your values, though. Is that part of your value system? And do you truly want it to be part of your value system for the rest of your life? If you do, then it should be coming through in your everyday work. Doesn't mean that you need to be the person in the room that's talking about it. I hardly ever do, but I do drop it enough that if somebody wants to talk about it, they know that they can come to me.
Well, I
And
think it's on your Instagram too, Caitlin, right? It's on your Instagram as part of your heading. I think it's up there, right? It's like
it
Alabama
yeah.
fan, wife, something. And I don't know if it says believer or what it says, but it's clear that you are a person of faith. Yeah.
Yeah. I just think, I mean, there's no shame in that. At the same time, I never want to be the person that's throwing it in someone's face. But I know that I am a believer surrounded by a lot of non-believers. And so what if I'm the only person that they ever have an encounter with? And working with people all over the world, there's oftentimes that like people have never even heard of Christianity seriously.
Wow.
And not to say that that's, I mean, I find so much beauty in so many different faiths at this point in my
Absolutely.
life. And so I really, number one, educate yourself on other beliefs and other religions. Please, 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 please be accepting of all of them, because they are so important and so rooted in so many cultures, and that makes them so beautiful. I think though, for me, my number one goal coming into this company for the longest time was be the person that they can always knock on your door and ask a question about religion and or about Christianity. And I had one of my business partners who was really, really tough on me for the first decade. And I always like, God, does this guy just not like me? This is crazy. But now I look back and I realize he has taught me some of the best life lessons I could have ever learned. And he did play the role of my father that I really needed at this business. And I'm so thankful for that. When 10 years in, we were at a full business dinner, entire company. I couldn't tell you that one of the person at the table was a believer or had been vocal about it. And the partners, I wasn't a partner at the time, they got up and they were reading quotes about other managers in the company. And they chose which managers they wanted to read quotes about. He chose me, and I thought, well, that's weird. I definitely thought one of the other partners would have chosen, like, because I have a close relationship. And all these quotes, famous quotes, whatever, that remind them about these employees. And he read a Bible verse. And everyone in the dinner was like, what? And he goes on to say, like, I've been watching you all this time, and because of you, I have chosen to be a believer. And I remember I was about to leave the company. Wow. I was done. I was out. I was spent. I was burnt out. And I remember calling my mom and going, it took me 10 years to get one. Guess I'm here for the long haul.
Wow.
And he and I have shared so much about our faith since then, and growing in faith and exploring in different things. But it was so powerful to go, I'm doing all this work that it has nothing to do with the faith system, but because I stuck to my values and I set an example. I do not set a perfect example. You guys have heard my mouth. I always say Jesus created this mouth, and he's okay with what comes out of it. But
absolutely,
try to set a consistent, I've tried to be consistent in what I was offering. And the one person that I never thought was watching. And he has a beautiful faith, and his family has a beautiful faith. And although it looks different than mine, it's this connection that we have. And so just try to walk it out. You're never going to be perfect. None of us have the answers. It's all over the place. The world is so charged, especially politically at this point. And it's really hard to find your footing. But if anything, go back to where you first learned it, ask a lot of questions, explore other faiths, other religions, ask questions to those people, and just really try to have like an all-encompassing understanding to the best of your ability. And it's okay. You don't have to believe just one thing all the time. It's going to be fluid, I think, for everyone.
It's incredible. And I do think, Caitlin, you are, and I've shared this with several people, you are the kind of Christian that I know that I want to be. You're the kind of Christian I think that is palatable to a lot of other people. And I think some of it, you are earthy and you say what comes out. And I love that. And I'm minding my business because I kind of work here, right? So I got to mind my business right now. But one thing I love about you is you're the type of Christian that is just so accepting and inclusive of all people, all faiths. And so I think it makes it more palatable than people who are beating people over the head with Bibles and all that kind of stuff. So I just.
Yeah, that's my family. Can't do it.
Same. I grew up with the same. Yes. Yeah. Jerry
Jesus
Falwell.
puts everybody at the table, in my opinion. So
that's right.
I don't.
Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson. That's exactly. Thank you for saying that. I absolutely agree with that. Caitlin, thank you for everything, and thank you for the time today, for the class. You're just gold, and I get all the best reviews I get are when I have you on. So I bring you along to help me get better teacher evals. Everyone
the best
listens.
Teacher. I always say that.
Well, you're absolutely amazing, and so thanks so much for your time. I'll be seeing you next week, and I'll look forward to all of that. Thank you for everything, and thanks for your time today. So appreciate it, Caitlin.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Now, you see what I'm talking about? That is an incredible human being, And here's the thing I'm learning, class. The further up, hopefully, that my life is going, the better it's getting, the more successful it's getting. And that's what we always want to be, right? Is on this climb where we're consistently getting better. I always, I'm to the age now, 44, where I'm starting to see people who we started together. And I actually had a late start. I was making a lot of mistakes back in my 20s. And it wasn't until I always knew that life was going to start about 29, 30. It started, but I've always said that life for me was going to really take off at 40. And that has proven to be true. And I hope that's the same for all of us on the call, that we just consistently keep getting better. But the thing I'm finding with the people that I'm meeting at this stage in my life, they're all very good people. It's not just about the money. It's not just about the fame. It's not about any of that stuff. It's about, how do I really impact this world? And there's something I think for all of us, you understand this as well. The older we get, we look around at the world around us and we say, man, I don't have a lot of time on this planet. Even if we've got 40 years left. I hope to have about 56 years more on this planet, but that's in the span of a million years. It's nothing, right? So we're all trying to just push the ball forward a little bit. So when I meet people like Caitlin Stone, Jasper, it's very encouraging for me to see very successful people who are living their life purpose, but do it for such a greater purpose. So anyway, that's all I got for you today. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. Your questions are going to be in the Canvas shell. So make sure you find your questions there. And we have one more podcast coming up. Dr. Bob Brower, president of Point Loma Nazarene University. Another great interview. You do not want to miss that one as well. That's going to be next week. That'll be our final podcast. Hey, thanks so much for listening. I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.